Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and what if the Watcher had never interfered? I always got to check out a what if comic book. It's one of those things like I loved them way back in the day. They're one of the very few examples of not just a comic book, but any kind of a story where they're plot driven and yet still really good, or at least oftentimes really good. I would say most of the times really good. The modern day what if stories, it's kind of a toss in the air. You know what I'm saying? Coin flip, 50-50 chance. But nonetheless, hey, I wouldn't have discovered Brian Edward Hill likely if I didn't read a what if story in the modern day. So it is what it is, you know? I can't say no. This one in and of itself, I think, was actually, dare I say, fantastic. There were problems. Of course there were problems, but we're going to address all that stuff. And yeah, in the meantime, let's give credit where credit is due. So Dan Slott is the writer. Artist, Javier Rodriguez. Wow, this is really stupid the way that they wrote everything here. Excuse me, the letterer is VC's Joe Carabagna. Oh, so they're saying that Rodriguez did everything. Okay, that's easy enough. And he also did the cover art. Cool, very cool. There's also a couple of variant covers out there, and it makes sense. And of course, Fantastic Four was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And it's not just Fantastic Four. You got Uatu the Watcher. You got Galactus. Hello, you got the Silver Surfer. Yeah, a lot of stuff here created by Kirby and Lee, right? Okay, this book was really good. There were a couple of issues. I'm actually going to start with one of the issues. I didn't like the idea that the Watchers were not made to be very stoic in this. I know that there have been a couple of stories where they showed them being, really aggressive. Like they had the Renegade one, right? I forget what his name was, but there was the one Watcher who was a renegade, and he was messing things up, and they had to send people after him, right? That one I understood, but the average Watcher not being like the embodiment of stoicism, right? You'd have to be one of the most emotional. Aside from the Renegade one of the most emotional Watchers was always Uatu because he would interfere. He wouldn't trust. Oh, and I loved it. And just, dude, Slott had this book he had me from the beginning. When you just read the thing, oh, blah, 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 who the Fantastic Four is. I'm like, okay, cool. Then he starts talking about another race of beings. I'm like, oh, okay. So there's going to be an overall thread here. Is this going to be a what if that will continue? And it does. It's not going to be a part 2 to this comic book. It's going to be a continuation in the Fantastic Four, which I have to stay right off. That right there, more than anything else in this comic book, that right there, that is the genius of one-shots. That is the genius of the annual. That is the genius of, an event, be it a mini event or a major event or a whatever event. Anything along those lines, they've always been made so that you will now start following these things. Like case in point, from, one of the first true events, like the Mutant Massacre. If you weren't reading Thor at the time, but you were reading the X-Men books, right? You might start reading Thor, Walter Simonson's Amazing Run. If you were only reading Thor at the time, and maybe Captain America, right? Something, whatever. If you were reading Thor and you said, oh, this issue is going to cross over with the X-Men and stuff, with the Mutant Massacre, okay, whatever, and you go and look and read this and be like, holy crap, what the hell is happening in the X-Men books? I just remember those 5 kids plus the bald guy, doing stuff where, who's this guy with the claws, right? Who's this big, dude over here? What's going on? Like, it was amazing, and they were crucial. Thor got his arm broken doing that. It's one of those weird things where it's like, holy crap, I've got to start, let me go and see what's going on with the X-Men. And then you'd be introduced to Claremont, right? If, whatever. It's the idea that it crosses things over. If you were only reading a couple comic books and you read Secret Wars and you're like, wait a second, so I wasn't reading Fantastic Four, Ben Grimm's doing such and such, if he's going to stay, well, who's going to be in the Fantastic Four? Okay, I'm actually going to start reading Fantastic Four again because I want to see what's going on. Oh, She-Hulk, what? Like, it's one of those things that this is how you get people who are already reading comic books reading more comic books, trying out other things. Because I'm promising you right now, I am going to go and pick up Fantastic Four issue number 43. I think that's what it said that I got to read afterwards. Guys, you should read this comic book. Now, of course, there were problems, all right? There are a whole bunch of good things in this comic book. I don't want to spoil what's happening in this book because it will genuinely spoil everything that happened. Because there were some things in the book I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. And it's an alternate universe, so the permanent effects, one, aren't too permanent, and it doesn't matter because it's some other universe. But we know that Slott has a great, dare I say, fantastic understanding of the Marvel Universe, and he can incorporate things. I know there's a bunch of people who don't like Dan Slott. Listen, I haven't liked Dan Slott's Fantastic Four. There's a bunch of things that I haven't liked, that Slott has done, but I feel that there are far more things that I have enjoyed. And when you stop and you actually go and look at the things that he's done, go and look on the Marvel database and look up Dan Slott. Look at some of the books he's done. Scroll through and look, and it's like, oh yeah, I only like this and this that Slott's done, but I'm scrolling through and so, okay, I like that too. Oh no, that was good also. That was actually pretty brilliant. Oh wow, he actually has done a lot of really good things that I'd forgotten was Slott who did it. And then go and check out the things he's done in DC also, right? Slott is amazing. He's one of those guys, though, that he just shows he's objectively very human. Imagine having to write one novel, and boom, you're good, right? But then, imagine writing a comic book, where every comic book, every issue, no matter if it's coming out monthly or bi-weekly or whatever's happening, this comic book coming out, every single issue has to be good. Otherwise, you get annoyed. You're like, that issue sucked. Maybe I'm not going to read the next issue. You get a couple issues that suck in a row, you're done. And you're telling other people, this sucks, right? It's not easy writing comic books. It's simply not. As a guy who's edited comic books in the past, it's like, listen, man, this issue isn't that good. Oh, I know, but the next issue will be better. I was like, okay, but you got to make this issue good. You got to understand this. Like, every issue has to have something wow. At the very least, have the ending be something that makes us go, oh, this comic book sucked until the very last panel. Something. You got to have something in every single issue to keep the readers, reading. Nobody's going to read a crappily written comic book that has really great art. Javier, my mans. And nobody's going to read a comic book that has really great writing, but the art sucks, right? Like, it's an incredible trade-off that you have to make, that you have to acknowledge when it comes to putting together comic books. And again, it's my opinion that Slott, on average, at least his track record in the past has always been, no, Dan Slott is someone who I can trust. Not to hit every single time. No one can do that. No one. But he's had far more amazing hits than almost anybody who's out there today. His record speaks for itself. You actually have to look at the record though to understand it. So I can't help but to praise what Slott has done in the past, and this is one of those things that's great. Now, there are some bad things in here. Case in point, the Fantastic Four have to, and this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear the spoiler, it's a good comic book, Comic Book University, watch a video, watch an ad, and like the video, and all that stuff, and go away. Now we're going to continue. The idea of Galactus dying has always been something where, not always, but almost always, since the Kirby and Lee days, that if Galactus is killed, because he is killable, he is technically killable. It's not easy. It ain't easy. But he is technically killable. And if you did kill him, it wouldn't stop there. Which is fantastic because it's just like real life consequences. People get into fist fights in the streets all the time. And they think, oh, it's just going to end right here. No, because the police are going to show up at some point. You're going to see this person again in court. Your address is going to be on the police record. So is his, or her, whatever, right? Like, the idea that's just going to end, you ever see this person again? Maybe this person's a tourist or you're a tourist. Oh, maybe you'll never see him again. But you guys are living in the same town, you're probably going to see each other again, right? It's one of those things like most people can't think past the nose on their face. Galactus is supposed to be an abstract cosmic entity that is the least abstract of the abstract cosmic entities. He's one that we can all see a physical manifestation of Galactus, and is different to everybody who sees him. But that's one of the things I've loved about the cosmic universe in the Marvel universe, right? The cosmic entities, the cosmic realm, the plane, and also about Galactus implicitly. He's different to everyone who sees him, right? Almost like a manifestation of our own fears, loves, desires, all of our emotions, and our intellect, our logic, our reasoning, our creativity, everything that comprises our brains, our sense of reality, our perceptions. Galactus tests them all. I've loved that. And that's one of the main reasons why if you mess up Galactus, I will hate you from a distance. You're cursed. Anybody who Danhausen? No? Anyway. Was that a good? I was actually surprised at how well I did that. You're cursed. Anyway, loved it. Absolutely freaking loved it. All of that stuff. And one of the things that I've hated the most, or I should say disliked the most, is when someone tries to explore that. And it's inevitable that someone is going to try and explore every single little aspect of the things that Lee, Ditko, Kirby, Starlin, Shooter, all of the greats in history. And we go into DC also, and they're more like, there's always going to be something that somebody wants to explore further, right? Always. But I've always disliked the idea that someone explores the idea of the consequences if Galactus dies. I've always wanted to be something that was it was entirely abstract. What happens if he dies? I don't know. Are you Roy Thomas? No. Then you're probably not going to come up with an idea as good as him. And I know that people have, are you Louise Simonson? No, then you're probably not going to come up with an idea that was as good as one of hers, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's amazing. It's astounding to me when someone tries to explore this and they think it's a good idea. And it's like, you should probably, test this with an audience, a pre-audience first. Don't just send this straight to beta. Don't do that, no. And I know a lot of people, like, one of the stories that I have read from the 2000 eras that a lot of people have talked about was Abraxas. It was a fun story, but it was way too short, and the consequences were way too finite for what if Galactus dies. So I know there's a lot of people who really liked that, but no. And there's been plenty of other ideas out there too. What if Galactus dies? Then this happens. And it's annoying to me when, like, with the Donny Cates thing. What if Galactus dies? Oh, that's not even explored. Galactus died. I mounted his head on the Bifrost. We're good. Cool, right? Aren't I awesome? I've always hated that idea. The best thing Donny can do in this case is to indicate, oh no, Galactus didn't die. We didn't even fight. We were cool. We're bros, bud. You know what I'm saying? Galactus was in hiding. That's why there were no consequences. But my thing is, I've always liked the idea when you don't explore the consequences. It's abstract. It's something that we might not even perceive or understand. It's something that might not directly affect us, or we wouldn't comprehend how it affects us. But it would affect the cosmic beings. It would affect those abstract concepts out there, like eternity and death, the in-betweener, for crying out loud, order and chaos, right? All of them. It would affect everything. It might even affect the living tribunal in some regard. If Galactus disappeared, maybe it would cause all of his heads to turn and look at us at one time. Who the fuck knows? It's not about, it's just the idea that it's something and we can't let it happen. We're just humans. We can't understand, right? I've always liked the idea that some things don't be explored. You try and explore and see the face of Cthulhu and what happens to you, right? And madness affecting a human is nothing compared to the madness that affects a cosmic entity, because how would you know if they're mad or not? How would you know if they've lost what we would expect their minds to be or not? I love the idea that I'm just a pathetic human on this big mud ball that's spinning around, and somehow we're not all flying out because physics. I actually understand how it happens, inertia, whatever. But It's the idea that there are things out there greater than what we could possibly understand. What would happen if all the faces of the living tribunal looked at us at the same time? What would happen if the veiled face were lifted? I think that's been explored also at some point. I'm sure somebody's thought of doing that, and I probably would have disliked it also, but it is what it is. I don't know. Sometimes even things that Slott does that are not the greatest idea. Like just one example, the Hulk fighting the Thing in Fantastic Four number 12 of this series. I think it was number 12 or 10, whatever, something like that. I remember I was very annoyed at that because it took away from the main story. At the same time, we got to see the expertise that is Al Ewing, because he incorporated it into the story. He incorporated it into his Immortal Hulk story, which I would have rather it not have existed, and I would rather him have not necessarily acknowledged it, but I do also have to admit, the fact that he acknowledged it shows that Ewing cares more about continuity than, with all due respect, every other writer in Marvel or DC at any one time. And anybody is prone to missing something, but Ewing cares so much about the continuity. And go figure, most people in the higher ups or the other writers haven't realized yet this is why in Ewing we trust. Slott is fantastic. This is the third time I'm saying that in a Fantastic Four comic book. But it's amazing. And here's the thing. I've found myself becoming, in my old age, I'm sure, becoming a little more conservative than left, I should say. You know what I'm saying? Because I've never been any one thing. I've always been very independent. So, what party do you attend? I don't go to any party because screw that stuff. Politics completely out of it. Just talking about like my social ideas and whatnot. I've been, turning a little bit more to the right, and the idea of taking personal responsibility and things like that, because I don't know, I guess becoming more aware of my specialities. I've always focused on my specialties, which is teaching English, but finding more ways to monetize that outside of the standard working for someone, I've talked to people about this before, but just, I don't know, I've found that more. And this comic book was extremely right-leaning. When you stop and think about it for a moment, it was far right-leaning. Do not white knight these people. Uatu, you screwed up. You went and you helped them out, and you made them weak because of it. You made the Fantastic Four and therefore the Earth weak. And you had to keep on helping them out. You kept on giving them a handout. You tried to block everything with the supernova thing, or the fire in the sky. You tried to help out with, giving them the ultimate nullifier. Right in between both, Slott goes and points out, Uatu, you're the one who altered the Silver Surfer's trajectory when the thing punched him to land right in on the roof of Alicia Masters, which would calm him down and make him see and turn him against his master, right? All these things, like, holy shit, that alone, like, Slott, you're freaking awesome. You're awesome for that. Little thing, like, you just, that's a continuity, a slight retcon that makes the other stories make more sense. The original stories, the original introduction of Silver Surfer, it made a Lee and Kirby book make more sense. Imagine that, instead of coincidence. Oh, no, it wasn't coincidence. It was planned. Like, Slott has, he's got some really big-brained ideas that come off as very nonchalant. Like, it's easy for him, And I love that about the guy. But, like, he made this very much a pick yourself up by your own bootstraps thing. And there will be consequences. There will be things, like, it's not going to be that easy for you. There will be long-term and maybe even permanent repercussions from you having to do it by yourself. But you'll have done it for yourself. The one thing that I didn't see addressed here that I almost wish I would have is, or actually that I do wish I would have, is if Uatu's father would have said to Uatu, hey, you just complained that the Fantastic Four will forever be scarred and they won't be as effective against everybody else they've ever done. Oh, but look, they will be. I would have preferred that he also said, And there's still the Avengers. There's still the X-Men. There's still all these other groups out there. Hey, you know what the X-Men? Suddenly humanity stopped. And they recognized that mutants aren't all bad. Sure, there were still some fringe groups out there. But for the most part, humanity as a whole suddenly accepted the X-Men because they recognized they've been trying to benefit humanity. Not put mutants over humans, right? No. All of humanity. All. And that would have been amazing too. Everybody else would have had to step up. All the other teams would have had to step up their game a lot. They would have all had to mature a lot more. Put down their petty squabbles. This is a one-shot. We're never going to actually see this world. And I wouldn't want to see that world. It would be bothersome. It would be, I don't know. It would be boring. Right? No problems in this world? Why do I want to read that? Torture my heroes, damn it. But since it's a one shot that we never see, I can imagine on my own headcanon. Hey, look, these guys, they would have all had to step up their game a little bit and fill in where the Fantastic Four maybe weren't able to, in our Earth 616 continuity that we read all the time. The things that the Fantastic Four would have done, maybe they only did half of them going forward or less than that. And the other teams would have had to pick up their game. Maybe new teams would have been formed, right? There's a whole bunch of different ideas. Hey, if that's the case, then we could have gotten that new version of the New Warriors that we were waiting. Kibble Smith's best comic yet, one of the best comics out. People praising that comic book. The big time SJW one with the guy that does force fields, but only for other people, and the person who internet is his power, and what happened to that comic book? I really wanted to see that comic book. I wanted to buy one copy because I know that everybody was going to buy 300 copies each. It was going to be the Death of Superman comic book. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what that was going to be. Everybody was going to have one. It wasn't going to be worth anything. You can go and you could buy one of the most famous comic books out there for if you pay $25, I'm like, why'd you pay that much? You can get it for a lot cheaper. You get it for $5 because there's so many of them out there. Not exactly the point, right? But that would have been, that comic book would have been worth anything, but everybody would have had one. So it would have made Marvel a whole bunch of money. And we'd all be like, Marvel sucks. And it would have been true. All these people who praise this comic book, what happened? What happened? the greatest comic book ever suddenly vanished. Poof. The thing that made me start thinking differently about comic books. Seeing that, and the one thing that brought all of the comic book community together to be like, nah, this is some bullshit. You want some bullshit right here. You're doing too much. You crossed the threshold. And I don't think we've seen Kibble Schmidt since. Bye-bye. We don't want you back. Sorry. You make plenty of money turning Colbert into a chump instead of what was that one book that he did? I'm America and you can be too, and so can you, or something like that. That was good. His old Comedy Central stuff was good, and when he came to the Late Show, not good anymore. He's a sellout. Keep doing that, Kibble Schmidt. You're worth millions doing that. We don't need you in the comic book industry, right? These are the things that I think about when I'm not making my own small fortune. These are the things I think about. I liked this comic book. I did. I know there are going to be some people who are going to disagree with me. It's fine, but I really am staking a flag on this one and saying I will stand by this comic book. I don't know if Fantastic Four 43 or whatever is going to be next with this is going to be any good. I don't. But I honestly think that if you grab this comic book and you put aside the idea that Galactus' death meant nothing in this, I genuinely think that you will enjoy the hell out of this comic book. It was really good. And most of the concepts in here, most of the ideas were far from flawed. They were really good. I almost wanted to say the F word again. Fantastic. Really good. I enjoyed this. Guys, like the video, watch an ad, and let's see what I'll review next. You know what? I might go back and start looking at some old What If comic books. Honestly, this got the juices flowing in me again to look at some of the old comic books again and maybe start reviewing some of those. We'll see. Talk to you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.